Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation, around the world. I hope most of you are in quarantine, self-imposed quarantine, keeping away from this coronavirus bug, this COVID-19, this Wuhan flu, whatever you want to call it. It has really smacked the world upside the head, and definitely the sports world. But, as being troopers, myself and my buddy Boston, you know him as Austin Ward, we're continuing our desire to bring you these Tim May podcasts from week to week. We're going to have a special guest on later in this podcast, Liam McCullough, deep snapper extraordinaire for Ohio State, who planned on showing his wares to the NFL scouts last week on the Ohio State Pro Day, but of course that got canceled. Boston, you know him as Austin Ward. Not sure if there's ever going to be a Pro Day now. It looks like the draft is not clear. It looks like they want to still hold the draft when scheduled, but it'll be by uplinks by the teams involved. But that's just one of the things that's been thrown into disarray as Ohio State, the NFL, the world in general deals with this coronavirus.
Yeah, it won't. Not having a pro day won't really impact most of these Buckeyes. I mean, it's Chase Young was probably going to go number 2. No matter what. Jeff Okudah is going to be a top 5 pick. J.K. Dobbins, what he did already, just meeting with teams at the Combine, he got all that stuff out of the way, go down the list. But some of the guys that didn't get a chance to go to the Combine, thinking of somebody like Robert Landers or Jayshon Cornell, Brandon Bowen, and then Liam McCullough there. I mean, he has a marketable skill that could make him a living for a long time. And all of our jobs, are impacted by this. But when we're talking about, college football players who are, graduating or left early to make their living the next level at the NFL, there's a lot of uncertainty for these guys. They don't know. It's even hard for them to, find 2 or 3 people to record, long snapping or guys working out for, how's Brandon Bowen supposed to show really what he can do without sort of that pro day opportunity and none of these meetings that they could go take with teams with all the travel restrictions. It's kind of crazy to think about, and obviously we're talking about a game, but you and I work in sports covering it, and these guys play it, and that's how they make their living, and it's just another part of how this virus has impacted daily life and professional lives.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and but I'm going to throw this interjection in here. I think I'm going to go blind if I stare at this green light much longer. That's signifying that my camera is on. Does yours have a green light on it too?
Yeah.
Austin?
Yeah.
Are you with me on that? Do you follow what I'm saying there?
Yeah.
I think I'm either going to go blind or be cross-eyed. So if I look cross-eyed as this thing progresses, let me know. I just hope we got a decent quality going here. We're experimenting with these things from week to week, trying to get the quality up. But you're exactly right about Brandon Bowen. That falls into, if he's got an agent, falls into kind of the purview of his agent to get a nice mixtape out there. DVD. Digital recordings, a highlight of him and what he did get done this year when he stepped back into full-time duty, and I thought played extremely well as the year went on. Is he a first, second, third round draft pick? Probably not. Is he still a project? Probably so. But this is a guy I think can definitely, I'm talking about Brandon Bowen as an example, could definitely find work as either guard or tackle in the NFL. The guy, when he walks through the door, he's immediately impressive. Yep. And then you talk to him, he's impressive. And then he has some impressive video. You agree?
Yeah, and I think it was one of the last one of our Lettermen Lives at Roosters. We had Jonah Jackson and Brandon Bowen come in and talk about it. And Bowen at that point was like, they had a bet on which of those 2 guys was going to run a better 40. And Bowen, was not upset about the Combine snub. Initially, he thought he would go, but he was like, I still have a pro day. I'm still going to get to show what I can do. This is more fuel for the fire. And then you don't have that opportunity. I've told him several times he doesn't want to complain publicly about the Combine snub, and there's no value in it for him. But for me, I thought it was crazy that the starting right tackle on one of the best offensive lines in the country, who had also played guard as a starter previously in his career, why this guy was not invited. I know that you can't just take everybody in the world, but him not being there was just confounding to me. I didn't understand it. He's got a future with guys with his size are very rare. Guys with his experience starting at a school like Ohio State in multiple seasons are even more rare. So I think he's going to be fine, but it's just, it's one of those things that I had a hard time wrapping my mind around before the cancellations, and then it became even worse for him, trying to get through this and raise a young son and with his fiance at home and all these other things like that. That one blew my mind.
It'd be interesting thing. I think the combine, the way it works, I can't remember the minimum number of teams that have to have an interest in you, show an interest in you. That's how the combine invitations come about, and he might have had, I think the minimum number is 3. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's kind of how it works, because you can't invite everybody, as you well know. And there are guys clearly who go to the combine every year who don't get drafted, and there are guys who don't go who do get drafted. So it'll figure out in the wash. Like I said, he can show his part. His agent or whatever can put together a video that can show the part he had in, for one thing, launching the most prolific rushing season in Ohio State history by J.K. Dobbins and Justin Fields, the great Heisman finalist season he had. So there are a lot of things that he has going for him, I think, down the road. And like I said, the other thing it has, and we'll talk about this before the draft comes around, but the other thing he and some other guys have is his upside is still in front of him, in my opinion. He's still climbing that hill. I don't want to equate it at all with the coronavirus flattening the hill thing that we're all dealing with right now. But that's why I think he definitely has a promise. But let's jump back to the news of last week and how it impacts Ohio State going forward. I called it the trifecta week, for want of another term, because early in the week, as you scooped everybody on, Trey Sermon, the running back from Oklahoma, who put himself into the graduate transfer portal, opted to decide he's going to Ohio State. He's going to play at Ohio State this season, if there is a season, going to transfer. It'd be his final year in college football. And then Travion Henderson, the highly regarded, maybe the number 1 running back in the country for the 2021 class, announced late in the week that he is committed to Ohio State. So quite the trifecta, right, Boston?
Yeah, it's Tony Alford, really, he's serving it up on a tray there to have one more.
Ooh, I like it.
On top of it. You throw in Evan Pryor, the week before, and this is really just a pretty incredible run there for Tony Alford. And really it's building off of there's always this debate, like, Berm's been talking about on his show with Chive, Spencer Holbrook, like that Tony Alford had this rough year because they missed out on 2 kids in the previous recruiting cycle. Well, I mean, he hadn't lost his touch as a direct coach, because as you said before, J.K. Dobbins just posted the first 2,000-yard rushing season in Ohio State history. He had a backup that ran for almost 800 yards in Master Teague. He must have been doing something right, developing those guys and building relationships with the players already in his room. And then he turns right around and goes into the next cycle and gets 2 of the top 5 to 10 running backs in the country, a 5-star and a 4-star, and somebody that he had initially recruited, 3-4 years ago in Trey Sermon, who still loved his experience dealing with Tony Alford and wanted to play in Ryan Day's offense and be taught by this guy who just had a 2,000-yard rusher. So Tony Alford had not suddenly forgot how to coach or how to recruit. We all have bad days in the office, sometimes bad years, but when you stack it all up, Tony Alford still remains one of the best assistant coaches at that position in the country. And then he said he's got 3 people now in a row that just validated that for him moving in to 2020 and beyond. So it's a huge deal, because we spent all spring talking about this running back position and how, in the current state of it, when it got to be Master Teague being hurt and Marcus Crowley being hurt and only Steele Chambers, and then suddenly everything is lined up for years to come.
It's funny how that happens, though. If you follow my drift, I mean, opportunity, man. People see opportunity. Obviously, Sermon sees opportunity immediately for his senior season, and obviously, he's coming off knee surgery or knee injury from last year, which he lost half of his season last year at Oklahoma after a knee injury. So he's got a little bit to prove, but by all reports, he's coming along extremely well from that. We're really not clear. You're hearing good things about Marcus Crowley, and he'll be ready for preseason camp, if there is a preseason camp, but you don't know for certain. So Sermon sees opportunity. And then if you're Henderson, you're sitting there, they're signing Evan Pryor, but you look at the stockpile at the running back thing. You're talking about Marcus Crowley and Steele Chambers and Meion Williams, who's coming in this season, if there is a season, he's part of the 2020 recruiting class. But that's what guys look at all the time, and I think it has. Number one, you got to show you're going to use your running backs in a big-time way. Ohio State has definitely proven that, with the exception of 1 year, 2018, when Dwayne Haskins Jr. just lit it up. But even then, J.K. Dobbins still had a 1,000-yard rushing year. But what Ohio State has proven the last several years, especially in the first season under Ryan Day, is they can throw the ball prolifically, and the Buckeyes can run the ball prolifically. And I think you have to show that attraction to people. But the main thing is it's opportunity, and I think all these guys are seeing that. And I look at Henderson, man. You watch his video, and it's crazy. The guy averaged over 12 yards a carry this past season as his team won the 3A title in Virginia. And you guys, of course, did a good job of video and, having little conversations with him over the last month or so. And Berm had that exclusive interview with him the day he opted to commit to Ohio State. But, what does he, from what you've seen of him, Austin, what does he bring to the table that, piques your interest?
Yeah, so, Berm and I, right before the shutdown, we're on our road trip, and we met with Travion Henderson there in Virginia, talked with his coach, and, he was a really he's like, we've worn this out, this expression, like that they're recruiting good players and better people. Yes, sir, no, sir, to every conversation that I had with him. His coach, Yerby, opened the doors and took us into the weight room and talked about, this kid's work ethic. He physically, I can't remember exactly what Berm said that they listed him at. I think it was 5'11",
195. Yeah.
He was bigger than that. He kind of reminded me a little bit of Zeke in terms of his physique. And
say that again 3 times.
Zeke physique. I don't know if I could. It doesn't sound right coming out. But and then he kind of carried himself in a way that reminded me of J.K. Dobbins. And I know that that's a weird, that's a high bar to mash up those two people. But quiet, polite, hardworking kid. Like J.K., he hadn't visited Ohio State when he made the decision to commit, which is kind of a unique wrinkle there. It tells you about Tony Alford's ability to communicate with these kids without necessarily having to get them into Columbus. The highlight reel, as you said, is absolutely absurd. I had just watched it the first time. Berm's like, you probably should see this before you meet him and talk to him, because sometimes they all seem the same. Oh, this kid scored a couple touchdowns, and then you get into it, and it's 15 minutes of nothing but touchdowns and 53 of them. And then, he was averaging, I think, just like 13 carries a game because they didn't need him in second halves, and they wanted to save some of the wear and tear for the next level, which was kind of crazy to hear his high school coach talk about that. But this is the kind of talent that they're dealing with. They know that there was a huge, bright future for him, and he didn't want to wear him out just doing this in high school when it was unnecessary, because basically every time he touched the ball, he was going to score. Yeah,
as I said too, there's that great part of the video though that pops up every now and then where he's playing a team that's in red with gold or yellow helmets, and the field is not in the greatest shape, and literally every time somebody takes a step, dust flies up, and as I tweeted out to folks, it's like literally like watching somebody leave you in their dust. It was crazy, but I've always, because I've told you I grew up in East Texas. Saw Billy Sims play live a couple times. Earl Campbell played against my high school, Lufkin, when he was at John Tyler, and just saw a lot of great running backs down in that area. And it's just amazing on the high school level how a great running back just pops off the screen or pops off the field at you, and it's worth the price of admission to go watch. And, it'd be great to go watch him play his senior year this year a couple times over at Hopewell, Virginia, right?
Yeah, it wasn't that bad of a drive. I think it was like, Berm and I broke it up and stayed maybe an hour or so away, but you get to Richmond 6 6.5, maybe 7 hours, maybe just a little bit more, depending on your traffic. I think that's part of the appeal too. For Travion Henderson and his family to pick this spot. It's manageable, to get there in a day.
Yeah.
To watch him do this in person, because his coach also said that there's a limited number of teams that they can play in their area that
match up
in their rankings. So they play up several opponents in the Richmond area, and he still dominates just that same way. It's not like he's beating up on, truly outmatched competition in every game. He's that great of an athlete, and his senior year, what he can accomplish there, the numbers he could put up, the records he could break, it's pretty outlandish. And you hope that everybody gets their chance for their senior season or college football this year to watch that, because it could be truly special what he could accomplish.
Yeah, I was going to say, you worry about running backs have a junior year like he had. I think he only had like 198 or 200 carries, which isn't a lot. Right. And the reason is because a lot of those went the distance, So you worry a little bit about the wear and tear, but Bill, you watch his video and he didn't get a lot of tear. He didn't get a lot of wear, but he did get a lot of tears, as in he just took off in a tear to the end zone. And I knew I'd make that work eventually. I got to get that joke back into the wheelhouse and groove on it a little bit. But the bottom line is that's what stands out about him. And like you said, seems like just a great young man. And with a couple of like ridiculous exceptions that came up a couple of months ago in the Ohio State family, they've been recruiting pretty high level individuals the last several years, and that seems to carry on, right, Boston?
Yeah, I think both of these guys, at the running back position fit the bill, and same deal when I talked with Trey Sermon, yes sir, no sir on the phone. These guys are, they carry themselves well. Now you still have to go out and prove it. We, as you mentioned in the past, like sometimes we have limited dealings with these people, but I think you look at the recent classes, there's been a noticeable shift. I mean, you talk to those guys, that they've got bright futures and can accomplish a lot on and off the field. The same is true if you go back to what, our experience is talking with Harry Miller. These guys that they are bringing in are just, Jack Miller, CJ Stroud. Like, you're blown away by them when you get to meet them, and that they've got their heads on straight. And I think what's really interesting, too, about these two running backs is they're coming in the same class. They're both highly touted. They could have gone anywhere and been the guy. But you referenced like 2018 and JK's year and the struggles with the running game. But, Mike Weber was pretty close to where they almost had two guys go over 1,000 yards. I think that sort of resonates with guys like Evan Pryor and Travion Henderson, because they also are thinking in their mind that it would be great to share the workload and not have to have 300 carries a year in college so that you can get to the next level. Evan Pryor's coach, we're sitting in his office in North Carolina, and he's saying, well, it's all about getting to the second NFL contract. Like, this kid's not even in college yet, but that's in their mindset that this is the way that he could potentially, make a living and take care of his family and have some generational wealth. And you have to have a plan for that. And it used to be you want to be the guy at running back. You don't want any competition. They actually want to be part of a 2-man, 3-man backfield and rotate to limit the wear and tear. And I think you might see something with Ohio State in the future that goes a little bit more back to 2018 with the Weber and Dobbins sharing the load. I didn't think it worked that well, but there were other reasons and other factors at play for that limited the success of that rushing attack. But splitting the carries, I think, is something Ohio State very much intends to do moving forward. Yeah,
but here's the thing. I mean, the thing under Ryan Day that you're getting, that like everything is cyclical, as you know, in football, and the big time teams, even Alabama came around to like when in doubt, air it out, over the last several years. But the cycle is going back, I do believe, because of the way defenses have reacted to the spread style of offense and the zone read option stuff. But it's going back to having a little bit more of a look of a power back, because, and for obvious reasons, because the more you can spread a defense out, the more the opportunities are there for true north-south runners, because now all of a sudden you're running through arm tackle attempts as opposed to square up guys in the gap there waiting for your linebackers, et cetera. And these two guys, Sermon, and then and Henderson, they both fit that bill in my opinion. Because Henderson, man, if you watch the video, he sees a gap, he just goes. I mean, there's no hesitation, and yet he also shows the ability to outrun you to the edge. And now that's against high school competition, but some things don't lie. And as fast as a guy's feet goes, and the amount of time, the amount of yardage he's covering in that span of time is a truism throughout. And I think that's what stands out is both of these guys have true running back mindsets.
I think, I had Beanie Wells looked at both the films for both these guys that committed last week with Sermon and Henderson. And the one is already up on Henderson. There's another in Sermon coming in a couple of days. And
yeah, by the way, let me interrupt. I love watching those videos when you have guys on and they break down these fellas, but go ahead.
Yeah, I love it too because they have such a unique perspective on it, having done it at a level that you and I could never even really dream of, especially when we're talking about Beanie. But I thought it was helpful to look at Sermon before the injury last year, what he was doing as a junior, because everybody develops and gets better, and it was hard to understand why this guy would not be still prominently featured in Oklahoma's offense then or moving forward. Obviously, the injury took care of one of those aspects, but he's well put together. You're talking about getting guys in position to run through arm tackles. You're not going to bring down Trey Sermon with one arm. He did stuff. There were a couple plays. I watched his junior highlight tape, last week before getting ready to talk to Beanie and making plays, a couple catches out of the backfield that looked exactly like, you had Jalen Hurts running around in that number 1 jersey, and you're like, okay, I can make that transition pretty easy because the offense looks similar. The quarterback's wearing number 1. He's rolling out and making some plays, finding a running back out of the backfield, and Sermon's, scoring touchdowns that way. He can do anything I think that Ryan Day would ask him to do. And certainly it's huge for the program moving forward to get those two commits in Pryor and Henderson. But, Sermon is the guy that they need right away. And the fact that they got that to address, not only the steps, but somebody who I think, and he said we'll see exactly when he arrives, if he gets to arrive, how early, if that's May or not.
Yeah.
Graduates and when he's cleared. But if this guy, when he's physically healthy, I think he's a truly explosive, dangerous running back. And add that piece to what Ohio State already had on offense, that's scary. I mean, that could go down as the move of the offseason.
Real quickly, because I get this question a lot. I even get people emailing me Twitter questions, on the Twitter, et cetera. What's your best guess right now? Because we don't know. The unknown is crazy. I mean, what we're about to talk about has nothing to do with what reality may be a month from now or 2 months from now.
Mm-hmm.
But, you saw what Kirk Herbstreit put out there. He thinks the season is in jeopardy for legitimate reasons. And if you look at it, straight up, it definitely looks that way. Well, what are you sense? I'll give you what I'm thinking after you tell me what you're thinking, Boston. But do you think we get the football in the middle of July sometime, or maybe August, or do you think the season is in jeopardy?
I think the way that it was phrased maybe last week by Kirk, who I love Kirk Herbstreit. I have nothing but respect for Kirk Herbstreit. My dealings with him during my time in Columbus have been fantastic when I was at ESPN. He's earned his spot in covering college football. But with his platform, I thought there comes a little bit, none of us should be recklessly speculating on when it's going to come back, and he's going to be the person that people listen to most because of how big his platform is. If I was going to say right here, I personally feel like there's going to be college football this season. I don't know if there will be schedule changes. I don't know if it's going to move to the summer. There are 100 different suggestions that are out there for what might happen. I thought just the way he said that he would be shocked that there'd be college football. I mean, that is his opinion. I'm not going to take it away from anybody. I just think that it might have upped the panic meter unnecessarily because none of us truly know. And he was just stating his opinion. It's not like he said the NCAA told him there was not going to be college football, none of that. And he just, that's how he feels. That's fine. I am generally more optimistic, I guess. I think that as this, the timeline changes for social distancing and now going all the way through April, all the Big Ten activities, those are definitively closed down into May. I think we're probably looking at a situation where maybe we get to the start. There won't be a rush to do it in June either. Maybe you have like a mini camp situation in July to ease into training camp and get people back and acclimated on campus. But again, I don't know for sure. I just think right now, I before I thought, if you'd asked, we talked about it a week ago, I thought, well, maybe late May, maybe June, they start to mix things in and you get the workouts going. I would, at this point, I think that they're probably not going to be on campus through June. But again, that's just me sitting here and speculating. And I always tell people, like I just did with Kirk, like none of us truly know. But my best guess from what we're hearing is that there won't be any sort of way for Ohio State to engage in football activities until then.
Well, the interesting thing, I saw that there was somebody put forth the idea that they could possibly move the season to summer.
Yeah.
And I'm just going, what are you talking about? I don't even get that. I don't even know why you would want to move it, try to play it earlier rather than later. I understand how this COVID-19 virus works, et cetera, from the standpoint of there's a theory that things could die off to a certain extent. That's a bad use of words, but could fall off to a certain extent in the summer when the heat comes, but they don't know that for sure about this virus. But I don't know why anyone would think you could move things forward. If anything, you're talking about moving backwards. Of course, the problem is, and I know, with college football and the NFL, is most of the games are played outside, whereas in NBA, NHL, you can play them any time of the year. You could move the NHL and NBA seasons to late August through whenever, finish out the 2020 and then pick up again, in some kind of some kind of augmented, that's not the right term, but some kind of changed thing. But college football, January and February are tough months, anywhere, but especially in the North. So, I could see more of an idea, like I said a couple of weeks ago on this podcast, I could see more of an idea of possibly things coming back around in July, giving teams an extra 2 weeks of preseason camp to be used in a certain way so that you don't just run, five straight weeks of a preseason camp and guys are on their last legs. There would be cautions put in there and some limits put in there, but I could see the season being played to a certain extent, possibly in the fall. But I could also agree with Kirk. What's critical is the next 2 months with this thing on whether indeed the curve does flatten in terms of new cases, et cetera. And so I think making any kind of guess right now is hazardous, but people want to hear some kind of speculation. We know life is going to get back to some type of normal situation sooner or later. And of course, being antsy and being in self-quarantine now for 2 weeks, I know I've been doing that for the most part. You'd like for it to end tomorrow, right?
I would give anything for it to be over. And what I care about most, though, and it sounds foolish. I think I said it on this show last week that college football is how I pay my bills. It's how I built this house, for my wife, and I didn't buy this not how I built it, but it's how I got this house to put a roof over my wife.
Let me interrupt you. And it's how you were able to afford a Leroy Neiman painting, which is up over your right shoulder in this video.
Well, that was actually handed down from my father, but
Antiques Roadshow, I got you.
Yeah, but so like college football is my livelihood, so I want to do anything I can to get it back tomorrow or July, or to make sure that there's a season. So I think that not everyone has to have that mindset, but that's really important to me. And I think for people in Columbus and Ohio State fans around the country, that's important to them too, because even if you don't pay your bills through college football, that's the tradition, and watching the Buckeyes on Saturday, that's a big part of the way they've always lived their lives, and that sense of normalcy. We want and crave that back in our life. So I think we have to remember that we're not guaranteed to get that if we don't take care of all of our business today. And I know I don't mean to preach about it or stand on a soapbox, but that's just the reality. If this thing drags into May or June and there's still concern about the spread and transmission of the disease in June or July, they're not going to let Ohio State go back onto campus. They're not going to let any students go back on campus. But for football specifically, you're talking about a roster of 100 people, support staff of 20, 30 guys, training staff, managers. You have any gathering of Ohio State football. Like, people have this idea that they could play college football without fans in the standings. A, it'd be miserable. It wouldn't be college football without the fans. But B, you still have several hundred people, 400, 500 people for two Big Ten teams in close physical contact, sweating and all this stuff. Like, football is the most in jeopardy that you could be if you had a positive test for COVID-19. It's not going to be a matter of the fans. So the spread of it has to be flattened and non-existent, really. And I don't know if you get to that point, but that's why Kirk Herbstreit is saying that there is some concern. It's not a shock to me. Maybe again, it's the optimist side, but that's why there is a consideration in the mind of Gene Smith or NCAA presidents that could be the outcome. But as we sit here in March, we still don't know. Just think about the TV numbers. If only parents were allowed to attend the games, like they put forth with the NCAA tournament before they finally canceled the tournament. But but you could space out, the 300, 200 parents, around in Ohio Stadium. You have plenty of 6 foot spacing. But just think of the TV numbers. But then how would you parlay that into making up the revenue you're losing from ticket prices? Because the thing there is, it's like the TV numbers would be ridiculous, but our company's going to be able to pay exorbitant sums to be sponsors of TV. See, that's the whole trickle. It's not even trickle down. This is like a whammo down theory that's going on here with the economy, which was going to take a while to get, to kick back into full gear, or even like third gear, much less top gear. So yeah, you're right. I mean, there are all kinds of considerations out there that have nothing to do with sports. But as we've talked about on this show a couple of times last couple of weeks, sports are a major part of the economy. I mean, the amount of people who are involved in sports, the amount of people who make their living, like us, covering it, like people working at it, the people who, the service industries involved, and it's just right on down. I mean, it kind of reaches out like an octopus, in all kinds of like different levels of life. And, you look at the restaurant bar industry right now. Oh my goodness. It's crazy what's going on and how many of those could even bounce back quickly, et cetera. But like you said, the main thing you have to have here before you can make any kind of ridiculous guess is you got to know what's going on with the COVID-19 curve. And, and it's kind of like, I kind of equate it to, you can get things pretty much cleaned out, but it's kind of like you're in a room with 100 people and one fella happened to step in a dog pile on his way in the door. It can ruin the room for everybody else. You're right.
And that's kind of what you're dealing with here. One person could sully it for everybody out of a group of 100. And this is what's interesting. And like I said, can you sanitize the Woody Hayes Athletic Center thoroughly every day after every practice, after every meeting? That's that would be too high a price to pay just to have football again, and like I said, but it is interesting because when you really think about it, and I'm sure that's what Kirk Herbstreit was thinking about, was just the far-reaching aspects of this COVID-19 compared to other things that college football has dealt with in the past, from the Kennedy assassination, to 9/11, to all these other little interruptions. I mean, the hurricane interruptions. Hurricane comes and goes. There's cleanup involved. There's misery for some, but it comes and goes. This is like a slow-moving hurricane that maybe hadn't even come on shore yet.
and all we can do is control your part, right? Like that's why you and I aren't in the office right now, and it's been closed for Lettermen Row for 3 weeks now. This is the best we can do to hope that we get to do what we really enjoyed later on. We got to go through a little bit of a sacrifice now.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as usual, I appreciate Boston. You know him as Austin Ward coming on my podcast. And as I promised, ladies and gentlemen, we're back with Liam McCullough, deep snapper extraordinaire for Ohio State the last 4 years. And now, like many others, are sort of sitting in limbo, getting ready for the NFL draft. And, Liam, I'm not sure you're thinking whether you're going to get drafted being a deep snapper, but you're thinking you're going to get picked up by somebody, right? But your chance to show your wares kind of went out the window when these pro days all got canceled, including Ohio State's, which was set for March the 25th. But just how are you keeping your your mojo, I guess, to borrow a Austin Powers term? How are you keeping your mojo during these times?
The biggest thing is just training, staying consistent with my training as much as I can. The fact that Pro Day was canceled obviously doesn't help. But, as a football player and especially as a specialist, you got to be ready for anything. You got to be able to adapt. You improvise, adapt, overcome, as some people say. So I've been trying to stick with my training as much as I can. I've been recording all of my snapping workouts. I recorded some of my pro day drills. I recorded a 225 bench test. So luckily I am kind of set in a sense where when there have been teams that have contacted me that have said, hey, we're interested, we got questions about this, that, and the other. We would have loved to have seen you in a private workout or at Pro Day. And I tell them, look, I've got some of these drills recorded that I can send to you. And so I've sent them to teams that have asked for them. I've put them up on my YouTube channel so that they are accessible. So, if there are things that teams need to see, they can see it.
Liam, I've been infatuated with the art of special teams for as long as I can remember. I used to carry a football around with me when I covered games way back when I was first started as a sports writer back in Texas. I've kicked a ball through the uprights in about, I think, 92 stadiums now, around the country.
Wow.
Till my, being 66 now, the right leg ain't what it used to be. You understand my drift there. But in your profession, especially the deep snapper, and by the way, I've always wanted to say this to you. One of my favorite lines from Top Gun is, "You live your life between your legs, Maverick." Remember that? Did you ever see Top Gun?
I haven't, but I've heard the quote.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. But if you've been around me a lot, you'd heard it a lot. But the bottom line is, you've been nearly perfect through, your entire career as a deep snapper. What do you think the NFL teams are looking for when they're looking at your ilk?
I think the two biggest things that NFL teams look for are consistency and blocking. That's the biggest change when you go from college football to the NFL, is that pro-style punt scheme that very few colleges run. So they want to make sure that you can block, that your footwork is sound, and that while you're doing that, you can still be consistent with your snapping. And
take me back to when, for folks who don't remember, and make it, you can make it succinct, but when did you decide you wanted to be a deep snapper instead of a wide receiver or a linebacker?
So it's the long story short, I kind of did it all through Pee Wee football in middle school just because I needed someone to do it. And then my true freshman year of high school, during the summer, my varsity head coach, Vince Trombetti, was watching me snap, and he pulled me into his office after practice one day, and he said, "Listen, I want you to be the long snapper for the varsity team." And at that time, I think I was only the second freshman in Kilbourne history to play varsity as a freshman. So it kind of caught my dad and I by surprise. And after that season, we said, you know what, this is maybe something that I could pursue and try to do in college. So we started doing our research. We actually used the website longsnap.com to kind of to research some colleges, and that website's actually run by my now agent, Kevin Gold. And we ended up researching some long snapping instructors, and we landed on Chris Rubio, who we felt was the best in the business and who I believe is the best in the business. And so I started going to Chris Rubio's camps and got nationally ranked, and then started hitting the college summer camp trail and started earning some scholarships.
You know how NFL teams are. They once they get a really good deep snapper, they hold on to them almost like their grandfather's favorite watch. You know what I mean? It becomes almost an heirloom. How tough do you think it is? Will it be for you to break into the NFL? I mean, what's just your sense of it? I know you have overwhelming confidence right now, but what's just your sense of how tough a road you are hoeing here?
Yeah, in any year, it's a tough road. Like you said, a lot of teams, they'll hold on to their snapper for a long time. There are guys in the league now that have been playing for 14, 15, 16 years. So it's very tough to get in, especially because everyone at that level is so talented and very experienced in such a sense. Now, fast forward to this year with, like you mentioned, pro days being canceled, private workouts being canceled. It's even tougher because now it's all off of game film. And especially for most schools who don't run a pro style punt scheme, who run the spread punt or the shield punt or whatever, it's tough to get the right tape and get in front of these scouts and these coaches. But I think they realize it on that end too, on the NFL end. And as tough as it is, there is always opportunity. Whether it's one team, two teams, four teams, whatever it is, there's usually around one spot open each year, at least for competition. The problem is now you have potentially over 100 people going for that one spot because you have everyone that's coming out in my draft class, as well as free agents that have come in last year's draft class and the year before that and the year before that, as well as veteran free agents that are either unrestricted free agents on other teams or that are trying to get in the league or trying to get back in the league. So there could be over 100 people going for one spot. So it's very competitive and it's very tough. Only 32 people in the world have that job. There's no backups.
I know.
Nothing.
It's crazy. I mean, there are fewer NFL deep snappers than I think there were SR-71 Blackbird pilots. So, I mean, I'm an aviation buff. Sorry, man. But everything always comes back to some kind of flying an airplane for me or whatever. But, it's just interesting to me, though, because it's almost like you want to just endear yourself to someone because a lot of you guys are pretty good. Your video speaks for itself. I mean, the double cap removal video, for example, that speaks for itself, right? I mean, because specialists have a lot of time to kill, so to speak, and you and Drew Chrisman were probably as good at killing time as any twosome I've ever run into. But it does pay to be a little spectacular, right?
Yeah, it does, and
wait a minute, spectacular in a consistent way. Go ahead now.
Exactly. It helps. And that's the thing as a specialist is we take our jobs very seriously, but we also know when to have some fun and when, the right time is to have some fun and to lock in. And in an environment that's so tough and so stressful, as is college football, you gotta have a little bit of fun. And I think we, over the last 5 years that I've been at Ohio State, and I know it'll carry on, but I know that we tend to do a good job of having fun, also knowing when to lock in and be serious.
Yeah, I mean your shirt every year from your changing shirt every year, but that didn't really change unless you look closely. For check-in day at the hotel is legend. You know that, right? I mean, explain where that idea came from in a nutshell.
Yeah. So briefly, after my true freshman year of camp, walking in back in 2015. I saw all the reporters there taking pictures.
By the way, could you believe that we were all standing there to watch you guys walk into a hotel? Could you believe that was happening? Give it to me from your perspective.
From my perspective, as a freshman who was just launched into this world of college football at such a huge, incredible university like Ohio State with so much tradition, I knew that everything would be big. So whether it's game day, whether it's community service trips, whether it's walking into camp, walking across campus, there's always people watching you. And that was something that Coach Meyer said that the coaches said is there's always people watching you. You're always representing Ohio State. So I kind of had a mindset, and I knew that, everything was going to be big, but I didn't realize it was like the red carpet at the Oscars or something, walking into, the higher regions to the fall camp.
Well, wait, with it being the beginning of training camp, it also might have been us watching the Green Mile, you guys going in, to work for the next 2 weeks with no days off, Go ahead, though.
So that kind of struck me by surprise. And then after, we got into camp, I saw the pictures and I thought, geez, someone took a picture of the backup long snapper, that's a freshman, And so I thought that was kind of strange, but kind of funny. And I remember asking Bryce Haynes, I was like, do they do this every year? Like stand here and take pictures of us? And he was like, oh yeah, they do it. It's kind of the kind of
ritual. Yeah,
the ritual kind of going into the season now, because now we're officially in preseason. And so I remember thinking, well, shoot, this is such a stressful time. This is such a, the next 2 weeks are going to be a grind. Everyone's going to be, people are going to be excited to put the pads on, but, guys are going to start hanging their heads. Guys move a little bit slower in camp that second week. So I remember thinking, how can I turn this into something fun, something where, we can have a little bit of fun before everything, like I said, before everything really locks in for the season.
Yeah.
And I think I was talking with my parents, and we just thought, what if we took that picture, if they're going to take a picture every year, take the picture from last year, put it on a shirt, wear it in, and you'll have like an Inception thing. And I actually have never seen the movie Inception, and I hadn't watched it until this January. It's a great movie, but now. But yeah, so it kind of sprouted out of that. We never expected it to. I never expected it to kind of blow up how it did. But it was just something kind of fun that my teammates and I enjoyed. And at first, I got a little bit of heat from it from guys like Coach Combs, who didn't think that was something very funny. But at the end of it,
really?
Yeah.
Coach Combs didn't think that was funny.
He's a very intense guy, and I was the young freshman, and so I caught a little bit of heat from that. But after that, I had every year, especially this past year, I had players and coaches alike, staff members coming up to me saying, "Oh, is the shirt ready? Is the shirt ready yet? Oh, you got the shirt for this camp?" And so it was a lot of fun. And at the end, I had guys wanting to wear my shirts from past years. I know 2 years ago, Johnny Dixon wore one of my shirts in when he walked into camp. We had some guys that wanted to do the same thing this year, and we actually thought about making like 50 or 60 copies of it and giving it out to whoever wanted to wear it into camp. But we decided to kind of just keep it small for my last year and just kind of have that one final shirt.
Yeah, I was going to say that probably would have been against NCAA rules or something to do a 60-man thing. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to get to that in a minute. But the bottom line is you did, it's funny how tradition starts, who knows the first time they sang Carmen, Ohio, in front of people. And then Jim Tressel made the team go down at the end of every game, win or lose, and sing Carmen, Ohio, and what you guys do now, and they weren't really doing that before, so traditions start in small ways. Do you think it will continue, this tradition you started with your brother, or do you think what do you think it'll die? Would you rather see it be retired? What's your take on that?
I really don't mind either way. If someone wants to carry it on, they're more than welcome to. I'm not a guy that's like, oh, that's my thing, you can't do that. If Rowan wants to carry it on, or someone else, that's more power to them. If they, want to do their own thing, that's fine too. Because I know that, once I started doing that, Sean Nurenberger, his last year at camp had a shirt. Drew started doing shirts.
Right.
So everyone kind of likes to have a little fun with it in their own way. So if guys want to put their own spin on it, they're, more power to them. They're more than welcome to. They don't have to do, the Inception shirt. If someone wants to carry that on, they're more than welcome to. But if guys want to do their own thing, then more power to them.
Hey, you brought up Drew real quickly. Were you invited to his wedding, or was that a Vital personnel only affair?
So
he got married. Drew Chrisman got married over the weekend, or at least he posted the photos of it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So they Drew and Avery, congratulations to them.
Oh yeah.
But they were planning originally, I believe, to get married in May, and they were going to have a traditional wedding. But because of everything going on with the coronavirus now and quarantine and everything, they kind of did a last minute intimate elopement wedding, with their group of family in the Mormon temple, and then shipped off to Hawaii for a honeymoon. So I know that it was kind of not a last minute thing, saying that it was last minute because of the situation that they were in. So yeah. I think that was great for them. I'm so happy for them. They're two great people, and God bless them, and wish them a lifetime of happiness.
You know what's funny? If there's ever time you wanted to fly on an airliner, this might be it. Because number one, the air in an airliner is reprocessed every like 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah. Has a HEPA filter and all these other things going on with it. Number three, they probably got on like a Boeing 767 or something. They were probably one of like 8 people on it, So the only crowds you don't even run into a crowd in the airport anymore. So flying may be one of the safer things you can do from a social distancing standpoint right now.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting that you say that. That those same thoughts run through my head. Back in 2018, I took a trip to Hawaii, and I remember this massive plane that we took from LAX out to Maui, and it was just, there were so many people, and I can only imagine now, there being 10 or 12 people on this massive plane. Yeah. And the flight price, I was looking just because I was curious, because I heard that airline tickets, the prices were dropping, and I checked. I think you can get round trip to Maui for like $440 last time I checked, which is unreal. Yeah. That's like a quarter of the price. Yeah. My wife and I went there a long time ago, back in the late 80s, and to get to Maui then you had to fly to Honolulu, then take a Hawaiian Air or whatever, And I forget we landed, and there was a Aloha Airlines jet that earlier in the year had lost its top. It was flying from like whatever, and it landed at Maui, and it was still sitting there with the tarp over the opening. Yeah, it was a big situation there that Aloha Airlines had to deal with. But being up on things, I definitely booked my flying with Hawaiian Air that time. but yeah, it was something to see that jet sitting there off the side of the runway where it had stopped, or where they had towed it, where literally the top had flown off of it because of corrosion for some problems. And of course, that saved a bunch of people's lives later, because they found this problem, I think, on a lot of jets and fixed it. But eventually they did, get things straightened out. But I want to ask you, how much has your life been disrupted by this whole COVID-19 situation, coronavirus thing? It's been affected. It's not as much as I would have thought it would have. Starting in January, when I started doing all my training for pro day and everything, I wasn't doing much more than going to the gym and training, and then going to the Woody and doing my running, and then coming back and eating and sleeping. So I still do most of that. The locations have kind of changed a little bit, but I also got a dog this spring, so I get to spend more time with the dog. Girlfriend's working from home, so she's always here now.
Great.
So her life has changed probably more than mine, but it's kind of nice. It's nice having her and the dog here all the time. It's just kind of relaxing.
Speaking of movies, though, have you been by the Woody Hayes Athletic Center? It's basically off limits to you guys, right?
Yeah. So from what I had heard, they are obviously, with everything being shut down, gyms, training facilities, limiting however number of people can be in at one time. I know that the Woody Hayes is shut down. In talking with Rowan, my younger brother, he has said that they're off now, I believe, until May 4th or 6th or something like that. Yeah. They're still doing a ton with Ohio State football. They're having virtual meetings, they're watching film, they're watching professional film, and, they're having to write critiques on NFL kickers, punters, and snappers, and then present those to the unit and to the coaches. I know they just did that yesterday. So they're doing a ton of stuff. They're tracking their food intake, they're tracking their workouts, everything. So yeah.
Is Rowan getting a prepared menu or a nutritional guide, or how is that working? Because Coach Day told us last week they're even shipping food to people, different people around the country, et cetera, sending them exercise bands, whatever it is that they can do, But how just specifically how's that going just from a nutritional standpoint for Rowan?
Yeah, everything's going great for him. Ohio State's team dietitian Kayla Olson is fantastic. She's even quick to respond to me when I have nutrition questions, and I don't even play for the Buckeyes anymore. She's great. She's offering all of them nutritional advice. I know they're sending out whey protein and stuff to a lot of the guys, exercise bands, things like that, like you said. So they're really making sure that everything is staying on track. Really, they're trying to make it, and they've done a good job of this. They're trying to really make the only change the location.
Yeah. How impressive is that to you, though, how people have sort of responded and kind of rolled with this punch? I mean, how impressive is that to you about Ryan Day and his staff and how they've kind of, adjusted to it?
To be honest, it doesn't surprise me at all.
Why is that? Why is that?
This staff, Coach Meyer's staff, Coach Day's staff, the Woody Hayes staff, Coach Mick's staff, I truly believe they are the best in the business. They are incredibly efficient. They're quick to make decisions and to delegate authority. It's a group of incredibly intelligent individuals that come together that make an organization that can respond to anything. And the swiftness and the efficiency with which they respond and adapt is, it's second to none. You'd think it's the U.S. military.
Yeah.
It's honestly incredible. So I'm not surprised at all. Coach Day and Coach Mick, really have total control over every aspect of the program. And I'm incredibly impressed, but I'm not surprised at all with how well and how smoothly everything's transitioning.
All right, you're out of you graduated last May, not, if I remember correctly, degree in finance. Anybody can get one of those, man. No, I'm just messing with you. Number one, how tough was that? And then I want to ask you some specific questions about what you would change about an organization in a second. But how tough was that from a standpoint of keeping your focus? Because football, even for the specialists, there's a demand out there for your time, et cetera. But how tough was that? Or do you feel like you were sort of a driven guy through this whole thing?
Absolutely, I had to be. So first of all, from the standpoint of at Ohio State, nothing is accepted short of graduating. So you have to graduate, first of all. That's non-negotiable on the football team. It was tough, though. I will say it was tough, especially my senior year. I was taking my GEs were already out of the way, so I was taking all 4,000 and 5,000 level finance courses and a couple graduate finance courses as well. So it was the lecture material was tough, but it was tough managing all the work I had to put in outside of class, as well as balancing that with football. So it was incredibly challenging, but I absolutely loved it. I loved what I studied. I loved my areas of interest that I tended to specialize in and focus on. I feel like I learned a ton. Haven't used much of it since, but that's okay because that kind of had to get put on hold while I focused on, my last season at Ohio State and then now training for the NFL. But it was tough. I'm not gonna lie. It was very tough. But came out, graduated with honors, and hey, if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Hey, man, getting back to a spreadsheet and riding a bicycle are the same thing. Just get right back on it, right?
Yep, you might as well. The toughest part of it, though, is just staying involved with everything that's going on in the world and in the markets and, reading the Wall Street Journal every day. That's the part that gets tough, especially when you're in football season and now when you're training for the draft and for free agency and everything. So it's tough to just stay involved, but if you can stay involved, it's not terrible.
Well, I got news for you, brother. I think the textbooks are all being rewritten as we speak. I mean, with everything that's going on, including the stimulus, the package that the president and his people put together, et cetera, and the way Wall Street, the way the stock market's just plummeted. I mean, I think we're in uncharted territory as far as whenever this gets over, the comeback. I mean, you might be part and parcel of that. Then again, you might be in the NFL for the next 15 years and be looking for some place to stash your cash.
Yeah.
Let's, real quick, though, let's get into this. And I don't even know if you have an opinion of this. I want to throw it out there. If you could change 3 things about the NCAA or about the rules that you guys lived under as scholarship athletes for the last 5 years, what's the fair thing to approach this I don't know, this conundrum, this debacle about players being able to share a little bit more in the largesse? Jordan Fuller, your teammate, has been quite, he's been quite open about some things he could see that could change like that and hardly anyone would notice it. But what, in your opinion, would be a fair way to go about things?
Well, I have 2 thoughts. The first is, what disappoints me is when I see things. I just saw recently, I believe it was Trevor Lawrence that tried to start a GoFundMe campaign for coronavirus relief, and it got shut down by the NCAA. I didn't read into it. I saw the headline. I didn't see why or what the reasoning was or what rule it was breaking, but that's disappointing to see. I understand there's rules and that there's rules you got to follow, and if they let this slide, then that happens, and yada yada yada, whatever it is. But it's disappointing when you have these student athletes that have this massive influence, over millions of people around the country and around the globe, and they're trying to do something good and they're trying to help people, and it gets shut down for whatever reason. Like I said, I didn't look into it, but that's really disappointing. I mean, you see all of the, in Joe Burrow's Heisman speech, he talked about his home back in Athens. And all the help that they needed out there. And you see the massive influx and inflow of financial help, of support in every single way, from the average person, from celebrities. You see the influence that these kids, because, a lot of us still are kids, even if we're 22, 23 years old, we're still, we're legally adults, but we're still kids.
Yeah. Somebody's been telling you what to do your whole life. I mean, is what you're saying. Go ahead now.
Yeah, exactly. But for these young men to have this level of influence at this age, it's incredible. And a lot of these guys that have this influence have a great heart, and they want to do good, and they want to help others, and they want to give back to the people that have given to them and supported them and lifted them up to get to this position. Yeah, and it's disappointing to see that get shut down for whatever reason. So that's kind of how I feel about the NCAA in that sense. I know that. Wait,
let me interrupt you though. This is what to carry on your argument though. The interesting part about it is, though, they can use you, meaning you, a scholarship athlete, to your likeness and whatever to promote themselves. I'm talking. And by the way, the NCAA is Ohio State. It is Michigan. It is Alabama. It's not some sheriff's department sitting over in Indianapolis with just throwing out rules and stuff. It's stuff that's voted on by the membership, enforced by the membership, et cetera. But it is funny how they can use y'all to promote things like the Final Four, or the college football playoff, or the, you know what I mean? But you're not allowed yourself to use yourself to promote yourself and or a cause that you believe in without jumping through some hoops. Now, there are reasons for that. We all understand that, right? I mean, Ohio State, a lot of the big-time programs would have a built-in ridiculous advantage because they could promise you, if you come here, you're going to be able to do this, that, and the other, and make that money. But that's why I wanted to interrupt and throw that out there. It's just, that's the conundrum. It's like, it's I don't know, it's almost hypocritical in some respects, but then if you look at it from a fair play standpoint, maybe it isn't, but go ahead now.
Yeah, and I think a topic of conversation that gets pulled into that realm and that conversation is the whole should athletes get paid for their image and likeness, their name, image, and likeness.
Yeah.
And I've really gone back and forth on this a lot because from my standpoint, I got a degree. I got to play 5 years of college football at, in my opinion, the greatest university in the world. I got a degree debt-free. I got job opportunities inside and outside of football that I never would have gotten without athletics. You know, and I got a little bit of a stipend so I could live during those 5 years, you know.
Yeah.
I got a lot out of the university. I took advantage of everything that I could have through the university. Did the university make money off of me, you know, using my not name, image, and likeness, because I'm not a big time guy, but did I make the university some money playing football? Yes. I feel like I got everything I could out of the university. I'm grateful for what I got, for what I did, what I took advantage of. So I'm good. I feel like I'm good. I don't feel like I need to be paid for my name, image, and likeness. However, I also see the standpoint of some of my teammates. I mean, if you look at guys like Chase Young, Justin Fields, Jeff Okudah, Jordan Fuller, guys like that, they're bringing in massive amounts of money for this university. How many times do you see Chase on ESPN or Justin on SportsCenter or Fox? You know, so those you know, the university, those networks, everyone gets ratings and money flowing in because of these kids.
Right.
And a lot of these kids are coming from backgrounds where they don't have much, and that money could go back to their families to be helping them. So I understand that point. You know, I didn't come from that background. I came from a much different background, a much different area and lifestyle. So I've learned to understand that point of view as well. And I completely agree with that point of view as well. So I can speak for myself and I can speak for my teammates, and those might be two completely different points of view. I think at the end of the day, the tough situation that you get into is if you pay athletes for their name, image, and likeness. Let's say, you know, you get paid as you would a professional athlete. The main problem, one of the main problems that I see with that is now, do you become an employee of the university? If the university is paying you to play football there, then you become an employee, in my mind, or an employee of the NCAA. And at that point, then how does a scholarship work? Because then you get into you know, merit-based pay. You get into hire at will, fire at will. So if I'm a, you know, quarterback and I have a terrible 2-game stretch, do I get fired? You know, whereas now, you know, when you're on scholarship, you can't get cut for your performance. You're on, you know, there are rules that govern that. And that's one of the complications that I see with that. One of the big complications is you now become an employee and you can be fired based off of your job performance.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. So I wrote a piece with Jordan Fuller about this back in the summer of last year. And, you know, I brought the idea, well, you know, the first thought is everybody gets the same amount of money. You know what I mean? And then the next thought is 4 or 5 years later, the star quarterback, he's going to have somebody representing him because, you know, you're going to be dealing with, then you're going to want more money than the 4th string quarterback or the, pardon the expression, the 2nd string deep snapper, you know, because it
is what it is.
You're worth more. And I said, would that cause a problem? And like Jordan said, well, in the NFL, there are people, you have a locker room there and all 45 or 53 guys or whatever, they're all making a different amounts of money. You get what you get as your as your efforts or as your performance deserves. And I said, that sounds good, but that's the NFL. Because like you just said, in the NFL, if you don't perform, you're gone and you get zipped and they bring the next guy in, et cetera. You really want that environment in college football. That's not really, when you're from a traditional sense, from the traditional Liam McCullough T-shirt at opening of camp sense, that's not what it's sort of all about. And yet you can see the argument, though, that, well, maybe it should be, but then that's really the professional, you know, model. So college football is different from the NFL for a lot of reasons. And that's one of them is you're sort of guaranteed if you kind of keep your nose clean, you know, you're guaranteed a scholarship for at least 1 year every year, right? And they're, you know, they basically promise you now for 4 or 5 years. But that's the whole can of worms that people don't look. All they want to do is pop open the can. They don't want to see where the worms are going to go.
Yeah, and what was it that I was? You brought something up that you said that it'd be basically the NFL. So then, well, does college football become do these become farm teams for the NFL? And the thing is that those guys that, like Jordan said, these guys that go on to make massive contracts, those are, or these guys, I should say, these guys that would, if college athletes got paid, these guys that would be getting paid, the star quarterbacks, the star receivers, the star pass rushers, these are the guys that are going to be making those huge contracts in if you're a freshman, in the next 2 or 3 years.
Right.
3 years. So the question then you can go down any rabbit hole and say, okay, well, can't you just hold out for 3 years? If you're if you're projected to be the number 1 draft pick, and you're a star wide receiver, a star quarterback, can't you just hold out for 3 years, because then, in 3 years you're going to sign an NFL contract and get a $20 million signing bonus? Well, then you get into the counter argument to that becomes, well, my family back home, they need money now. I want to be able to help them now. Then you get into the mindset of, well, the university is making so much off of me. I'm a star freshman. I'm a freshman that's, better than 99 than every other player in the country. The university is getting huge, influxes of cash because people are coming to watch me play. These networks are getting incredible ratings because people are watching me play, and I don't see any of that. So it kind of becomes circular, and there's an argument and a counter argument for everything. And I to be honest, I kind of see both sides, because you want, especially as someone who's played 5 years of college football now and been in that realm for 5 years, you want to see your teammates and your brothers succeed, and you want what's fair for them. And what would be fair would be, for them to get paid for their name, image, and likeness, for bringing in much money to the university, to the TV networks. But you see the flip side and the counter argument, and there's an infinite number of counter arguments on both sides that can be made, and it's just going to go back and forth. And I don't know if there will ever be a compromise or a perfect middle ground.
As one player a long time ago said to me, because this debate has been going on since I've been covering college football, and I started covering Ohio State back in 1984, and I remember talking to a star player back in that realm, is you don't really understand the finances of it, pardon the expression, until about your junior year. You know what I mean? And then you start going, wait a minute, how come I'm not sharing in this? And then you're gone. And that's the thing about college football, except for Forrest Gump. Even guys like Forrest Gump got 6 years, when he played for Alabama. But now guys can get 6 years, but that's not the way you want to go about getting 6 years. But my point is, but just by the time you kind of figure things out, and or maybe you become valuable, your eligibility has expired, you moved on. So that's what makes college football or college sports different from the NFL too, is there's a finite amount of time that you could earn this stuff.
Yeah, and I think what it boils down to is I think there are very few people that are going to say, well, I take that back. There are a lot of people that say college athletes get enough, they don't deserve it.
Yeah.
I believe that. But the problem you get into is, okay, what do you do? How do you do it? And there are so many variables that go into this. It's how would it ever work? And I don't have the answer to that. I don't know. I don't know. But
well, here, let me interrupt you. This is like I said, this argument's going on I've been covering Ohio State football for 36 years. It's been going on almost since I first started covering Ohio State football. Yeah. And I came up with a plan a long time ago I wrote about where this was way back when, I'd say every year I'd put $5,000 into a trust fund for Liam McCullough for every year he's on the team. And as like I said, a member in good standing, which means if you stay at Ohio State for 5 years, you got a $25,000 nut coming out of school that you could use whatever you wanted to do. And if you only stayed for 3, you got 15. The point, and this was a long time ago when I wrote this, but the point being, you didn't necessarily get it now, but you got it going out, which could kind of help you set up a little business, help you put a down payment on a house, whatever. And that was just an idea. But what I'm getting to here is, I think we're going to still be arguing about this 20 years from now, because I don't think they're ever going to go to that plan. I think I don't know what your stipend, how much did your stipend go up over and above? You were getting cost of going to school, right? money. Just give people an example now, because you're out of it now. What kind of finances were you getting from the college for being part of the football team?
So it's different. So there's 4 categories. There's on campus and off campus, and then in-state and out of state. So the 2 big categories are on campus and off campus. Below those, you have in-state, out of state, in-state, out of state. So the out of state guys always get a little bit more because their cost of tuition is a little bit higher. So I was in-state. So I'm from Ohio.
He's from where you're Kilbourne, ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely, all of us, born and raised. So when I was on campus, living in the dorms, and I'm in-state tuition, I got around between $200 and $250 every 2 weeks. So there's a big pocket of money that would get allocated towards me, and then they pull out tuition, room and board, books, all that stuff. And then I get whatever's left. And so that ended up being about $200 to $250 every 2 weeks for on-campus in-state. When I moved off campus, that number jumped from $250 to $852. So, but now that's just your tuition and your books pulled out of it. Because now when you're off campus, you got to pay rent, you got to pay for your own food. I use that money to lease a car, to pay my rent, pay my insurance, my phone bill, everything. So once I moved off campus, I was basically self-sufficient. My parents didn't cut me off, but they were like, look, you got an income now, so we're going to help you if you need help, but you're going to learn how to budget your money, budget your expenses, and, pay for, be an adult. So that's what I did. So for me, it was $250 and then $850 when I moved off campus. And that's every
every 2 weeks. And that's why about 15 of you guys all live in the same 1-bedroom apartment, right? No, I'm just joking.
I was actually a guy that liked a little bit of my own space. So like I live in a 1-bedroom apartment up in Dublin now. And, when I moved off, I lived with my brothers for a little bit and then got my place. Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting. I stand by my, I think you might sort of tacitly agree with me that I think this argument's going to keep going on. I think maybe that 850 is going to jump to 950 or something. You know what I mean? And or 1100. But like you said, the thing that I think a lot of the athletes don't look at, and the more money you make, the more the IRS is going to look at you. They're going to figure out a way. Did you have to pay tax on your 850?
Yeah, so it got pulled out of my stuff before I got my stipend. So taxes and everything got pulled out beforehand.
Yeah. So somebody was looking over your shoulder, taking care of you, the little angel that is the NCAA and Ohio State. Hey, well, Liam, last thing, I'll let you go because you've been one of my favorite guys, and the thing is, some of you guys don't realize who some of our favorite guys are because we hardly ever get to see you guys. Back in the old days, I used to hang out at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Like I said, I saw John Cooper more than I saw my wife during football season. You know what I mean? It was, because you could just hang out, go to practice. You could talk to guys afterwards and stuff. And as you well know, you guys are they ought to call it the Woody Hayes Athletic Cocoon now because that's kind of what it is, But the bottom line is, what are you going to miss most about your college experience? Because like you said, you took that wet towel and you wringed it out about as well as anybody I've ever seen as far as getting your degree, getting things paid for, getting a start on grad. I don't know if you started graduate school or not, but I would think, last season you were a graduate, but what are you going to miss most? Is it running out the tunnel and playing? What are you going to miss most about the experience?
A couple things. First of all, I'm obviously going to miss game day. I'm going to miss playing in the shoe. It really didn't hit me that I was done playing college football until senior day against Penn State when all of the seniors were standing there in the tunnel before the game. And we just looked at each other and we said, damn, like it's been 4 and 5 years now, and this is our last game here. And then that's when the tears started flowing. Guys were giving each other hugs. So I'm going to miss game day and playing in the shoe. I'm going to miss I think the cheesiest answer, but it's 100% true. I'm gonna miss all my teammates. I love them. I'm gonna miss seeing them every day. I used to joke with my girlfriend and tell them, I see them more than I see her. I see them more than I see my family. That really is your family. And even when you don't realize it until you're removed from it. And guys butt heads, and there were guys that I disagreed with that I butted heads with, and I miss those guys too, because those are my brothers. Those are guys I spent 4 and 5 years with.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
And it's tough. It's tough not seeing those guys every day. You kind of get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm ready to move up and move on, but you definitely miss it. You miss being a part of it. Shoot, I miss winter workouts at 6 a.m. and I miss mat drills already. But I miss that. So. Wow.
Yeah. It's interesting is too, the idea, the eagerness for some guys to get to the NFL. The NFL is a total different animal. They're always trying to bring somebody in to take your place or to make you think they're going to take your place. The psychological games that go on at that level are ridiculous. There are very few guys that get past 5 years in the NFL, as you know. I mean, I'm not talking about you deep snappers. If you guys get a foot in, you got it made, because coaches are so paranoid about special teams. If they got a guy doing it right, they don't want to mess it up. But you understand what I mean. I mean, it's what have you done for me lately kind of situation. Whereas in college football, yeah, it's what have you done for me lately, but there is a camaraderie there, a band of brothers feeling, I'm sure, that doesn't exist in almost any other sport, because football is so many guys packed into such a small space, pardon the expression, which is, by the way, why they got the Woody Hayes Athletic Center padlocked right now, because, coronavirus would flourish in that kind of setting. But the bottom line is, we're all working, you feel, for the same cause, which is a natty, a national championship. And it's just that time of your life. And some guys realize it while they're living it. I think you did. Some guys don't until 5 years later, and they go, man. I mean, look at Jadeveon Clowney right now. He's a free agent, and somebody's going to pick him up, but he's had a ridiculously crappy pro football career, and he came out was one of the greatest players ever, right? And now he's being questioned about how, you understand what I'm saying. I mean, the criticism, the scrutiny gets really tough once you get to the NFL, and this is the time of your life, and you're one of those guys who's embraced it and lived it. I mean, Drew Chrisman, I give it up to him, man. I mean, he found the woman of his dreams and got married, and he's still going to play, but you know what I mean? Maybe you specialists have more time to think about things, to think it through. What do you think?
I don't know if we have more time. I think that
I'm messing with you. Go ahead, though.
I know. I don't know. I feel like I have a different mindset from most guys. I wasn't a super highly rated recruit, being a long snapper. I kind of always had to look at the big picture. I wasn't a 5-star recruit that came in and said, okay, I'm going to spend 3 years here and go to the NFL. And that's my plan. The NFL was always in my back pocket. And that was always the ultimate goal. But I, had to look at it and say, okay, look, I need to start building a life. I need to start setting up plans B, C, D, and E. In case the NFL doesn't work out. So I kind of had a holistic view going in and throughout my collegiate experience of, okay, I'm not just going to, put my head down and be a football player and shoot for the NFL. I'm gonna do that, but I'm also going to think about what else do I want in life. Well, I want to make sure that I can have a job to support myself and support a family. So I'm going to get a good education. I want to end up having a family someday. So I'm going to, find a partner and find a woman that I can, see myself spending my life with, because that's important to me. And I want to have a family one day. So, I need to, make sure that I can take care of my family and my parents and my grandmas. And, I want to put myself in a situation where I can provide for my family and my loved ones, whether that be with football, whether that be with finance, whether that be with anything. I'm just going to make sure all of my bases are covered, and I'm going to make sure I can get everything out of college that I can. And I feel like not a ton of people have that mindset, and not a lot of, not everyone needs to have that mindset in college football, because a lot of these guys are, 3 years and they're out. But I didn't have that luxury, or I didn't have that opportunity, and long snappers don't. So I said, I'm going to prepare myself for any possible scenario that could come towards me. And that's kind of the mindset that I've kept through college, and the mindset that I have right now. Whether I get drafted, whether I get signed as a free agent, whatever's going to happen, I'm going to prepare myself, whatever any coach needs to see in terms of film or, workouts or whatever, I'm going to prepare myself for every possible situation.
Yeah, you had more of the Ivy League approach than the get to the league approach. As you were sitting there talking about that, I thought that was kind of a snappy thing I just said.
I like that.
But hey, last thing for the NFL scouts who are watching this and going, man, should we take a chance? How many 225s did you do? How many 225s did you do in that video?
20.
That's pretty good. I mean, there were guys over at the combine and you didn't get the double figures. I don't know if you know that or not. Number two, watch the video of you on special teams, on punt team. You wanted to be the first guy down there to make the hit or to get the world-renowned down at the 2-yard line, didn't you? I mean, there's more to you than deep snap, and there was a football player in your heart, correct?
Yeah, definitely. I would have loved to have had more tackles during my college career. I'm not the fastest guy down the field, but it's tough to, be a dominant factor in coverage when you got, first round corners and top 3 round wide receivers as your punt gunners every year. All of my punt gunners that I've had are now, starting cornerbacks and wide receivers in the NFL. So I think that's something that's, when you're trying to race those guys, if you want to be the best, you gotta beat the best and you gotta race the best.
Yeah, but you had fewer yards to go because you just went straight up the middle, man. You didn't have to curve.
I also didn't get drafted well. I probably won't get drafted first round either. So
there you go. I was gonna say, man. Well, Liam, it's been a pleasure, my man. I've been wanting to get you on here. The restrictions, with Ohio State football and interviewing players when they're basically under the umbrella of Ohio State is pretty restrictive. But man, I'm gonna have you on next year when we talk about your first year in the NFL. We'll be looking back on it because you are. I mean, there's been some great deep steppers come through Ohio State. You know that. I mean, heck, one of y'all's team physicians, Dr. Jim Borchers, was, he was, I think, the only guy to touch Desmond Howard as he ran by on that punt return way back when. But there have been some great ones, and you're the latest in the long line, and it's been a pleasure watching you do your thing, my man.
Thank you, Tim. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. I'd love to come back anytime you'll have me.
All right, well, man, stay self-quarantined. Let's don't be getting that coronavirus anytime between now and the draft. And it's going to be a strange draft, that's for sure. But you're going to end up with somebody. I mean, your consistency, I think, speaks for itself more than anything else. Because bottom line, the NFL, the thing they want the deep snapper to do more than anything else is get it from A to B. And then what happens after that? If you get in on the tackle, good for you, right?
Yep, absolutely. Snapping and blocking is the most important in the NFL.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it was great having Liam McCullough on, Central Ohio, born and bred from Worthington, Kilbourne, spent 5 years at the Ohio State University, rang that towel out in terms of getting his degree, being a scholar athlete, et cetera. And now he's, like a lot of people, is on pins and needles, and I say that euphemistically, waiting for the NFL draft to come around, see where he'll end up. If he might end up being a free agent, he will sign with someone and more than likely make a team because he's that good. Liam, thanks for coming on. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching yet another Tim May podcast. We'll be back next week with somebody else interesting to talk to. Until then, we'll see you later.
Thanks, Tim. God bless.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe below to get the latest videos from Lettermen Row.
We got Letterman Live, we've got the practice report, we got rapid reaction. Hey, and we got Buckeye IQ with Zach Bourne.
For sure. We got recruiting breakdowns with Berm. We got whatever you need. Ohio State football and Ohio State athletics, we've got you covered here at Lettermen Row.